They killed Zomi because she was feeding children. That's why they killed her. The day will come when there will be justice, and those same journalists will be at The Hague. There's a hospital a few kilometers away that's a children's hospital. It's the last remaining children's hospital in the north of Gaza.
So recently you had a meeting with Wong.
She explained to me the barriers that we have, explained some of the issues. The hospital will be made out of refurbished shipping containers, constructed in Jordan. It's a way that we can bring communities together.
Do you think our government is doing enough?
I need the government on my side to get this done. I don't care about the politics anymore when I'm in there in Gaza. I want to save their lives. The next generation will eventually go back to Palestine, because Palestine will be free one day.
Good evening, everybody, and Dr. Mustafa, thank you for being here. I'd also like to start by acknowledging that we are on unceded Wurundjeri land, unceded exactly like my own homeland, Palestine. And I'd like to acknowledge and thank Ummah for always being unrelenting in their support. This is one of many support events that Ummah has been very dedicated to helping since the very beginning. And also I'd like to thank Brother Ahmad and Tawheed and everybody in Ummah for their awesome work. And also thank all of you here for deciding to spend your Sunday, one cold Sunday, with us here. But I promise you that listening to Dr. Mustafa will be worth it. And maybe like a lot of people have heard Dr. Mustafa, whether it's on national TV or socials, and he's been in a lot of, campaign. And I hope that the battery is not going to be flat, because I have about 50 questions for Dr. Mustafa that I'm hoping to go through. So whilst a lot of people have heard you before, I think it would be good to start at the beginning and tell the audience here, why did you decide to go to Gaza and how did that change you?
So, look, I think like everybody else, when you're watching what we were seeing on the TV screens for so many months, it's hard not to want to do something. And I wanted to do something. And I felt like resharing Instagram posts and shouting at my friends was just not cutting it anymore. So I started applying, to go to Gaza. Now, unfortunately for me, even though I've got a lot of experience in medicine, I'm not a consultant like a lot of these other doctors that go to Gaza. I'm a trainee. And because of that, not many people were willing to take a trainee. But eventually, someone did take me, and I went to Gaza. Yeah, it's very life-changing when you go to Gaza the first time. And you get addicted when you go to Gaza, even though it's so dangerous. And even though the hospitals get bombed and you're in there and there's no safe places at all. When you're there with the people of Gaza and you know what your presence does to those people, it makes such a huge difference knowing that you're there. Sometimes, they come up to us and they just tell us that we're just grateful that you're here because we feel like we're not alone, and, my thing was I was always have sweets with me, and I would always make sure that I would get sweets for everybody, tea breaks, biscuit breaks, just to keep the morale of everybody there. Because when you deal with a mass casualty event and you've got 50 dead bodies in the room and you have to pick them up and put them into body bags, it does something to you. But when you do that every day for 19 months, it really it dehumanizes you as an individual when you see that many dead human beings and they just become pieces of flesh that you put in a bag. And when I went there, my thinking was, I want to try and help rehumanize my colleagues, the doctors and nurses that I went with. So that's why for me, it was important to make sure when we did have our breaks that we would laugh and we would joke and we would have biscuits and Tim Tams. Made sure I bought a lot of Tim Tams. They went down really well in Gaza. So I think if we do get this hospital into Gaza, we need to get it sponsored by Tim Tams, and we need to get a lot of Tim Tams in Gaza as well.
Thank you. Well, we'll have to speak to Cadbury, right? I'm not sure actually. Elements. All right. Thank you. Only 2 weeks ago, Nasser Hospital and the European hospitals, both hospitals that you worked at, were in fact bombed. Dr. Majid Jaber was actually survived miraculously from that bombing. Actually, literally, he was only a few minutes before the area where it was bombed, which is actually the ER, part of the ER. Now, the situation in Gaza is worse, but it's probably still as bad when you were there. And Dr. Majid was saying the hardest thing for a medical professional is the fact that you know what to do, but you don't have the means to do it because there's no equipment, there's no, medicines. How did you deal with that situation, especially at times when the parents were coming to you with their children asking you to save them?
Do you know, I knew, because obviously it's the second time I went to Gaza, I knew the risks involved. And I knew what I was willing to sacrifice to help those kids. When we were working at the Baptist hospital, there was no ventilators in the emergency department. And, you know, this was during the ceasefire, even though it really was not a ceasefire. We had a child who'd come in and she was seizing. And because of the lack of medicine, she couldn't have her proper anti-epileptic medication. So she was having a seizure for 45 minutes. And at that stage, we were giving her, benzodiazepines to stop the seizure in this child. There's a video, I think, up there on my Instagram, you can see it. But she was seizing. And usually what you do is you put these children in a medically induced coma when you can't control the seizure. And we didn't have a ventilator to put her into a medically induced coma. And her breathing was beginning to drop, her oxygen levels were beginning to drop, and she was at risk of dying. So I knew coming into Gaza that there was going to be decisions like this made. So what I did was we didn't even have a proper oxygen mask to put on her. So we put some nasal prongs in and we put a normal face mask. Now, usually what you want is what we call a non-rebreather mask, which is it has a bag underneath it. So when she breathes, it recirculates the oxygen. We didn't even have that. So there's a hospital a few kilometers away that's a children's hospital. It's the last remaining children's hospital in the north of Gaza. And we called the ambulance to come transfer her there. But because there was no senior doctors there that could transport her, I was the most senior one, or one of the most senior ones. So I had to go in the back of the ambulance to take her to the hospital while bagging and masking her and trying to keep her oxygen levels up. And obviously, this is not approved by the UN. Nobody knows I'm getting on the back of this ambulance, and you obviously know how dangerous it is for paramedics. But going into Gaza, I made the conscious decision that I knew that I'd be making these decisions, and I was prepared to make those decisions to save those children. And that's what we did. We got into those ambulances, we went there, and we managed to get her transported back. And I called up her father the next day, and he said that she's awake, and they're taking her back home. Alhamdulillah. So, I'm just doing my job. Honestly, it's not heroic to do it. This is what we do every day as doctors. But in Gaza, when there's drones overhead and there's F-16s bombing everywhere and there's no medical equipment, you have to become more than just a doctor when you're out there. But that's the frustrating thing, was this is what you have to deal with to save a child's life, and not everyone's willing to make those sacrifices to do it. And sometimes, a lot of the time, children do die.
Very sad that this is happening on our watch. So something a little bit more recent. So Dr. Ala al-Najjar was actually working also at Nasser Hospital, and she had to rush home where there was an air raid in Khan Yunis, and all her kids died except for one who's in critical condition. Her husband, Hamid, who's also a doctor, was also severely injured. So this is all happening in the south of Khan Yunis. And in the BBC interview with, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Dr. Tanya Haj Hassan, who's a beautiful doctor who's also did a lot of operations also in Gaza and volunteered multiple times. So the BBC anchor said this. They started with the RDF statement that says they evacuated civilians for their own safety, and they're reviewing the claim of hard civilians, including obviously Dr. Ala's family. Now, Dr. Haj Hassan's response was questioning why we are still giving Israeli claims any airtime instead of focusing on what every credible organization operating in Gaza is saying about this genocide. Now, you've done a lot of media interviews I'm wondering if you're facing exactly the same thing like Dr. Tanya.
The first time that I went back to the UK and I did an interview with the BBC. And, they wanted to talk about my humanitarian mission. And the first question I got asked was, what do I think about October the 7th? Now, listen, I'm a doctor. I was there on a medical mission and I was treating victims of Israeli war crimes. If I was a doctor on October the 7th, I would talk about the war crimes that happened on October the 7th as well. I'm not shy to talk about these things and about civilians being killed wherever they are. We're Muslim. And as Muslims, we have a moral obligation and duty to talk justice. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. The killing of women and children is wrong. But it is done on an industrial scale in Gaza. We've never seen anything like it. When you have a mass casualty event and you put children on the floor to die because we can't see them all. And, the first night when we had the break in the ceasefire, there were so many bodies everywhere that we were picking and choosing who we would see. And there's no triage, so you don't know who's severely injured and who's not injured. You just have to look and see who's breathing, who's crying, who's got a leg missing, whose intestines are hanging out. And you just have to make a decision of who you're going to see. And obviously, I think I've said the story before of what happened with me that night. But, I've seen so many mass casualty events. I was there. The first time round I was there was when the 4 Israeli hostages were rescued and they killed over 1,000 people to get those hostages out. I was there for that mass casualty event. I was there for the mass casualty event of the break in the ceasefire. These were 2 of the worst days of this war. And I'm telling you, when you just see an entire room full of women and children, and there's so many that these women and children are then lined up on the streets. The videos are there. I've got the videos up on my Instagram. You can see them. They're just lined up on the street. Where's the justice here? Do you know? And like you say, just to go back to your question. Sorry, I know I'm rambling about when I talk about this, but to me, it makes no sense that we hold the lives of certain people higher than other people. There's 1 million children hostages in Gaza right now. The blocking of food and water is blocking these children from food and water. They are hostages. They are being used as political bargaining chips, just as these Israeli hostages are. When when I was there, the first time I was there, I brought with me a bag of mass gainer, right? And, I played it off like it was my mass gainer, but we were feeding children with this mass gainer the first time that I was there. That's how bad the blockade was. This is not new, what you're seeing right now. The 70 trucks that are going in a day that everyone's outraged about that it's not enough, that was happening when I was there in June last year. They were only letting in 70, 88 trucks. My shampoo and conditioner in June was the hottest commodity in the hospital because there was no shampoo and conditioner anywhere in Gaza. It was like $100 for some shampoo in Gaza because it was so few of it left.
I'm impressed that you took conditioner.
Yeah. I have to believe. You got to fake it till you make it.
Okay, so just continuing with the question on the media or the topic of the media. So Chris Sidoti, who's obviously an Australian expert, everybody knows who Chris Sidoti is, who was also a former human rights commissioner. He said that the media reports sometimes are credible and sometimes they are incredible. And Francesca Albanese, who was the UN Special Rapporteur, said also that the reporters, the media in the West in particular, are actually complicit in this genocide.
Yeah.
In the last couple of weeks, though, and I'm not sure if a lot of you here in the audience would have noticed, the tone on the media changed. Suddenly, there's actually sympathy. How do you read that?
Too little, too late. Too little, too late. I can't forgive what they've done. The first day that this happened, the Israeli government were calling the people in Gaza human animals, and they said we're going to put a complete siege on Gaza. The first 24 days, 1,900 children were verifiably killed in the first 24 days. That's more than any conflict for a whole year, more than the deadliest conflict for children in a whole year. 24 days of a population of 2.2 million. The highest one before that was Syria 2016, if I remember correctly. But this is a population of 2.2 million and 1,900 children killed in 24 days. You know, we're not, this ignorance where we were talking about how can you self-defense when you've killed more children alone? Forget the men and women, just the children alone. And, you know, when we're there as well, you know, and the hospital ground is being bombed and people are being burnt alive in their tents, you know, it's different when you're there on the ground, because I'm looking at them going, what, I can't see why they're bombing these people, why they're burning these journalists alive in their tents. When you have children coming in with gunshot wounds to the head and they've been shot in the head, right? You begin to understand, and you know, how many doctors have left Gaza and said they've seen the same thing? We've not been saying it just 2 weeks ago. We've been saying it from the start of the war. So the change in tone is because the mask is off now and they're openly saying what they're going to do. And I'm sorry. I can't forget. They have not just what they did to the people of Gaza, but all of us, all the aid workers that went to Gaza, when they killed Zomi, our own Zomi, they killed Zomi. They killed Zomi because she was feeding children. That's why they killed her, because they didn't want aid workers to go to Gaza. And the first time that I went to Gaza was meant to be May 2024. And if you remember, that's when Israel had invaded the Rafah, and it was President Biden's red line. And because of that, the Egyptian crossing was closed, the Rafah crossing was closed. So I was actually I think I was the first medical mission, or the day of the first medical missions, to go into Gaza via Jordan, right? And you know, my mum was extremely petrified because we were the first missions going in after Zomi had been killed, and now there was targeting of international aid workers. So there was that fear. Everyone knew back then what was going on. So to say 19 months later that now they're changing their tone, I'm sorry. The day will come when there will be justice, and those same journalists will be at The Hague. They will be at The Hague. There will be justice for what's happened.
Like the amazing author Omar Al-Akkad, if you have not known about the book, you should probably check it out. And the title of the book tells the story that one day everybody would have always been against this. So you're absolutely right on that. And just on, like, your mum was fearing you going, especially after Zomi's killing. I want to ask a related question. So one of the medics that were killed, one of the 15 medics, Rifat Radwan, is the person who sent a message to his mother.
Yep.
And he said in Arabic, Samhini Yamma, forgive me, my mother. And that was the last thing that he actually said as he was, like, basically given his last breaths. He was 24. The 15 medics, and I'm sure all of you know the story, were killed. Some of them were actually, their hands were tied. They were shot in the head. They were buried in the mass grave, and their ambulance was crushed, right? And, you know, they attempted to bury that, and they were, like, for a while, they were looking for those medics. Now, in a recent interview at The Guardian with a dear friend, Noor Haider, you did say that story, especially the story of Rifat Radwan and the message to his mother, resonated with you. Maybe you can share with this audience. Why is that?
Well, it resonated with me because I had the same phone conversation with my mother. Obviously, this was before his video call came out, but I called my mother when the break of the ceasefire, because, you know, there was no warning. And when the bombs were raining down, and remember, you know, 200, in the first hour, 200 people were killed. And most of them came to my hospital. So we were just seeing dozens of bodies being brought in, and obviously the hundreds injured as well. We literally thought we were in World War III. We literally thought this was it. It was over. And I called my mum, and I said the same thing to my mum. I said, Mama Samhini, forgive me, Mum. I don't want to cry about it because she started crying. But, you know, I genuinely thought it was over for us. And when I heard what he said as well, it touched me because it showed how connected we are, you know, especially as Muslims. You know, the first thing we think about is our mum, and the first thing we ask about is to be forgiven. because none of us are perfect. I'm not a perfect human being, and every time I go to Gaza, I always try to purify my intention. I want my intention to be for God that I went there, not for anything else, not for any fame, not for any popularity, anything like that. I just want to go there for the sake of Allah. And I want my mum to be happy with me. So I know that when I do meet my Lord, if I was going to meet my Lord that day, then I can go there. And one, my intention was pure and my parents were happy with me. And that was the only thing that I cared about when I was there.
I'm sure your mother is super proud of you. And a lot of the mothers here are probably thinking that, if we have a son who's a doctor and wanting to go, they probably would be extremely petrified. So good in your mother. If you can, upload, Dr. Mustafa's mother for her parish too. So recently you had a meeting with Penny Wong.
Yes.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how that meeting went and did you get what you asked for?
Yeah, so the first meeting is always an introductory meeting. They're just trying to feel you out, and I'm not a politician, but they just want to see what you're about, I think. And I think obviously I'd made a lot of noise on social media and through news channels and things like that while I was in Gaza, and I was pushing a lot in the media to have this meeting. Look, Penny Wong was very nice, and I think she understands the gravity of what's going on in Gaza. I think there's external politics at play. I don't think, I think their hands are tied a little bit, but just because their hands are tied doesn't mean that we can't help untie those hands. And that's what I'm trying to do. So, she explained to me the barriers that we have, some of the barriers that we have. If we wanted to get a hospital into Gaza, she explained some of the issues. And, I took notes and I said, all right, if these are the issues, I'm going to go solve these issues and I'll be back. So that's what I'm doing. I'm here to solve the issues and we're going to be back.
Amazing. And you, in the last time you were actually here at UMA, you said you want to meet the Prime Minister.
Yes.
How's that going? Are you making any progress with that or waiting for the outcome of solving the issues that...
yeah, I mean, look, there's, I want to go there to the Prime Minister and I want to be ready. I want to be ready with this hospital. We have the proposal ready for what the hospital looks like. We have it budgeted. We already have a hospital that's been built, similar plan and design. So we've got the infrastructure to build this hospital. I've spoken and reached out to officials in the Jordanian health sector and government because it's going to be built in Jordan. They're on board. We've got them on board. We've got the organization that's going to build the hospital. They're on board. I've spoken with representatives from the Indonesian government who help run the Indonesian hospital in Gaza. They said they're willing to help with regards to the governance of the hospital. I've spoke to the operations director of MSF. They say that they will be happy to have an advisory role to the Australian government with this. And I've spoken to the Minderoo Foundation with regards to funding this hospital. We're ticking everything off the list. All the barriers we're going to tick off the list. And the only thing that we need, obviously, is to get it past this blockade. I'm only a doctor. There's only so much I can do. The rest is up to the politicians. And that's why I need my Prime Minister to be involved. But when I have everything ready and it's all in a nice package for him, I'm going to say, here it is. Now it's your turn to do the politics and get this into Gaza.
Amazing. And I think all of us here in the room, and I think throughout Australia, would support such an amazing project. Through our own work at Olive Kids, we understand how difficult it is to find food, let alone construction material. But knowing what your plans are and how you envision that hospital and how it potentially can be built, maybe you can elaborate a little bit about this. Is not the traditional kind of hospital you're thinking about. Maybe you can explain to the audience.
So, look, we'll eventually share a lot more details about it, but this hospital will be made out of refurbished shipping containers. It's going to have its own solar panels above each shipping container. It has its own facilities to make oxygen cylinders. This will be constructed in Jordan, and it will be put on lorries, and it will be driven into Gaza, so it will be a fully built hospital on the back of lorries brought into Gaza, and then it will be arranged like jigsaw puzzles, and within a week it'll be ready to go in Gaza. The plans are that we have a 100-bed pediatric hospital. We have the plans for that. There's going to be an ICU in there. There's going to be its own power source. There's also going to be a kitchen in there that's going to cook for everyone. And what we do is while that's getting built in Gaza, they build the sewage system and the water system, and they build the gates, the big cement gates. So it's a secure facility. It has its own sewage system and it has its own water system, and it's self-sufficient. Energy-wise, the hospital is very self-sufficient, so we don't have to worry if there is a block in fuel or anything like that. Also, as well, the amazing thing about it is being in shipping containers is that we can build it in a safe place and drive it wherever it needs to be. So if it needs to be in Gaza, it's in Gaza. And if, heaven forbid, Trump's plan gets enacted and they get pushed out to the desert, we need to keep them alive, because the next generation will eventually go back to Palestine, because Palestine will be free one day.
Amazing.
So, and then just lastly, the other thing is with the hospital plan is that once Gaza gets rebuilt, these shipping containers can be used and incorporated into the larger structure hospital as well. So these act as a semi-permanent structure rather than having it as tents. This is a semi-permanent structure that can be used, and it'll be used while Gaza is being rebuilt, and then eventually it'll be incorporated into the larger hospital.
Amazing. We look forward to seeing that hospital open, and hopefully the end of the horrific genocide that we're all witnessing at the moment. So you keep on saying you're a doctor, you're humanitarian, but sometimes this blurs at a time of genocide. Do you think, and obviously our federal member of parliament is here in the room, do you think our government is doing enough beyond the hospital project?
Look, I don't think any government's doing enough. I don't think any government's doing enough. The fact that this has gone on for 19 months is not enough. The fact that Zomi hasn't had justice, these things tell us that no government has done enough. Look, a lot of people want me to come up on stage and they want me to criticize our government. I need the government on my side to get this done. I need them to work with me. So I don't want to attack them too much right here. Don't get me wrong, I'll give them an earful, but I don't want to attack them too much because I need them on my side. I need them to help me. And also what I want people to understand is that this Palestine issue, right, this has been going on for 75 years. No government has stood up for Palestine. They haven't, we haven't even recognized the Palestinian state. So to put it all down on one government's fault that they're not doing enough, I just think it's unfair, because I've grown up, and I'm sure you've grown up being in the pro-Palestine movement. You've seen how many governments, and they've all carried the same line and the same policy. It's going to take courage to change the status quo. And I think courage as they change the status quo. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? But I think the criticizing, it doesn't help. And I'll tell you why it doesn't help. Because when you're there in Gaza, I don't care about the politics anymore when I'm in there in Gaza. When it's children dying, the politics becomes irrelevant to me. I want to save their lives. And I think that's what we should focus on. If the government is willing to help, then we should give them a pat on the back and say thank you. Because like I say, Palestine will be free. There will be a Palestinian state. It will happen. But let's not keep beating each other over the head of how we do it. Yes, we need to pressure them, and yes, we need them to do it. But also at the same time as well, we also need to give everyone a pat on the back when we get things done as well. Because at the minute, a genocide, even a glass of water, if we can get it in there, I would kiss whoever's hand if it could bring a loaf of bread to the people in Gaza. That's how desperate the situation is.
Yeah, absolutely. But we can do the criticizing for you. The government is still definitely not doing nearly enough. It's actually a lot of levers that the governments, including the Western governments, can do instead of what is happening today,
Correct.
Which a lot of us believe is actually complicity. There's so many things that can be done, and we'll definitely be talking a lot more about this to our member and others, and everybody who's willing to listen. But I want to just go back to one of our obviously local heroes is Bushra Uthman, who's been twice to Gaza as well.
Yes.
I'm not sure if Bushra is with us in the room or not, but if she is, maybe not. And we have heroes like you. We have obviously like heroes from many Western countries, but we don't often enough speak about the heroes on the ground.
Yeah.
The Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, the doctors who are like risking their lives every day for what they're doing. Do you keep in touch with them?
I keep in touch all the time. So actually, I'm, I try and assist them as much as I can from here. Whatever they need, I try and help them. It's like family. they follow me on social media. They love all the stuff that I post, and they always leave comments. And look, when you're in a hospital together and everywhere around you is being bombed, and you're together, you could die with these people, and it creates a bond that you have with these people, and they are like family. And and I've said this over and over again. I'm not a hero. I'm not a hero, right? When you see those people in Gaza and you see those doctors, they're the heroes, right? The things that I've seen them do and the conditions in which they work in. I remember once when I was there, we had a mass casualty event and I was intubating somebody on the floor because there were just so many bodies. And, I asked the nurse to pass me the ETT tube, and he couldn't bend over to give me the tube. And I stood up, I got it from him, and I eventually tubed the person. And I said to him, "What's wrong?" I was going to give him a mouthful. I was like, "What's wrong? Can't you see we're doing this?" And he said to me that he's got shrapnel all in his leg, pelvis, and instantly it made me just realize where I was just like, this guy's working a 24-hour shift. He's covered in shrapnel, but he's working. And I said to him, "What happened? How did you get covered?" And he said, his home was bombed at the start of the war, and he lost most of his family. And yet here he is coming in every day to work, doing 24-hour shifts with shrapnel in his leg, not even able to bend down. It made me feel like an absolute monster. You know what I mean? To give me the ETT tube. But, these are the people that you're working with. When I was there, 70% of the doctors that we were there the first time we were there had jaundice, from hepatitis A. And they had bright yellow eyes, and they were working together in the hospital. Half the time, you didn't know who was the patient and who was the doctor because everyone was so malnutrition. But they turn up and they work every single day. And just another thing, just to show you how amazing these guys are. The first night when we had the mass casualty event, obviously we weren't ready for it. There was only 3 doctors in the ED, and then the international doctors. We were upstairs in our room. When we came down, there was only about, I think, like 8 or 9 of us in total, and hundreds of patients. Within about an hour or two, all you saw coming in the darkness of the night was these doctors and nurses that had come from their homes. Remember, they've left their families. Their families could get bombed and killed. They could get killed from drones as they could, but they came in the middle of the night to help because they could hear the bombs and they knew that we wouldn't cope. And I look at this and I go, they do this all the time. Imagine just every single day risking. We would call one doctor a hero if they did that once. They've been doing that for 19 months. They're real heroes. They're the people that inspire me. That's why, I just, when we talk about heroes and stuff like that, they're the heroes.
Absolutely agree. In fact, recently, since March, with the blockade, a lot of those doctors are actually surviving on 1 meal a day, if that. And like all of us, obviously, some people do intermittent fasting intentionally or do things like that and they feel tired and lethargic. So if you're a doctor and you need your energy, your full, physical and mental power with no food, it's, those are truly the heroes. But you're a hero too. I'm sure everybody in the room here agrees. So in the coming months, you have a few plans, and maybe you can share a little bit, including potentially participating in the march to Gaza. Is that something that you're considering?
Yeah. So, look, there's a lot that I'm hoping to do. Well, obviously, part of this is community as well. We have to understand that this is an occupation, that this is entrenched, and therefore we need to change what we're doing. We've been trying the same thing over and over again, and it's not working. We need to unite everybody here. We need to find common ground. And I think uniting over this children's hospital as common ground, it's a way that we can bring communities together. So I think that what I'm trying to do is not just get this hospital in, trying to get communities to come together, whether it's, today I just went and spoke with Sarah, who's one of the directors of the Jewish Council. And she said that they will hold a fundraising event for this hospital. And we'll bring the Jewish community and the Muslim community together to do this. We'll bring the indigenous community. We'll bring the students. I want to bring everybody involved to get involved in this because I want it to build bridges again between communities that have been affected by this. And, that's what the campaign is about. It's not just about, doing the hospital stuff. It's about everything else that goes around the hospital. Because if we're going to heal the children of Gaza, we've got to heal ourselves first here. So that's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely agree. So you're a rugby player, and we can tell. And you played jiu-jitsu as well, professionally, but also an emergency physician. How are these things complementary? Do they feed each other in some sort of interesting way, according to Mustafa?
I mean, look, I'm a guy that loves I just love action wherever it comes from. So, I used to play professional rugby while I was at medical school, and I used to sneak out because I wasn't allowed to, but I signed the contract anyway. I used to sneak from placement and I used to drive down to Leeds. I was at medical school in Liverpool. I used to drive down to Leeds. I'd train with the first team and I'd drive back. I'd put on my shirt and my jeans and I'd be covered in mud. And I'd turn up and she would say, "Where have you been?" And I'd say, "Oh, I fell over outside." And then she would do this, and it would be me on the TV screen. She goes, "Are you sure it was a fall?" And I'm like, "Oh dear, you can't hide it." But eventually we find a way to kind of balance it out with university. So I played professional rugby for a while. Then after I gave up professional rugby, to finish off my medical degree, I went into jiu-jitsu and I started doing a bit of jiu-jitsu and things like that. And as a blue belt, I got double gold European. I was European champion and I was a world bronze medalist as well in jiu-jitsu. And then I came out here to Australia and then I broke my leg and I gained weight. So that's where I'm at right now. So the plan now is to get back in shape and maybe compete again.
Amazing. Okay, so that's my last question. Although I have a lot more questions, but we'll probably stop at that one. There's a lot of people here who have been super active, and Palestine is really a litmus test for everybody.
Yeah.
Really, what's happening in our lifetime is something that's changing a lot of people here. And there's a lot of organizing, a lot of mobilization, including an amazing group here.
Yeah.
Who I really want to give them credit for having Gabriel really as our MP, truly, because it was obviously the thinnest of margins, but some of the people here contributed to making that happen, right? Because we have a former MP who did not care. In fact, he was against the ceasefire. Really, what do you tell to people in the audience here who are very dedicated, very mobilized, energized? How can they help you in your mission? What else should they really do?
Look, I'm just a young guy. There's people that have been in this movement for many, many years, so I'm not going to tread on toes because the work is invaluable. Look, I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm a doctor. All I know is medicine, so my job is to get a hospital into Gaza. But there are politicians that can get the ceasefire done. There are community leaders that can bring communities together. There are mums that can bring other mothers together in this and talk about the human and rehumanize these children. Everybody has a role. The teachers have a role. And, nurses have a role. We all have a role to play. I'm not going to advise anyone on what to do. I just think in order for this to work, it's a multi-pronged approach. It's not one method. Every even the people that are blocking the roads and protesting, everybody has a place. There's every facet of this. Some people have to be a bit more politically savvy, some are less politically savvy, but this is a movement and you can't govern the way people feel. But I think just the important thing is we just have to keep trying to make progress forward. So I think just whatever your skill is, try and focus on doing the best that you can with your skill that you have, because everyone's blessed with a talent.
Absolutely. So please do follow. It's the Beast from the Middle East, right? Actually, I should have asked you the question. How did you come up with that Instagram handle?
So, yeah, look, I mean, that's really bad because I didn't expect to go viral with Beast from the Middle East, but it just kind of stuck after that. And I was like, oh, shall I change it? When people start following me, I was like, let me just change it. And then it was like, oh, we're going live with the Beast from the Middle East. And I was like, oh, this is so bad. This is so cringy, like in Gaza. Because there was Arab reporters going, oh, we're here with Al-Wahash, which is like the beast. We're here with the beast. And I'm like, oh, please, I'll probably get killed now because everyone's calling me the beast is here. You know what I mean? But the way that I got the name was in rugby. I was nicknamed the Beast from the Middle East when I used to play. Because when I signed professionally, they give you like a fact sheet, because they want to obviously put you up on the website. And on the fact sheet, they said, what are your nicknames? That we could put you on the thing. So obviously I was, I'm 20 years old here and I'm, with this professional beating, I'm not taking this seriously at all. So I wrote down Mozilla, Mobocop, Mominator, Beast from the Middle East, Eskimo. I wrote all of these and I just thought it was hilarious. And then all of a sudden, the next day, they put on the website, the Beast from the Middle East. And obviously, you know what rugby teams are like. I got absolutely destroyed when I came into training. They went, "Oh, there's the beast from the Middle East," and they had written on the thing, "the beast from the Middle East," and then yeah, I just got absolutely hand for it. And then I thought maybe it'd die down, maybe it'd just be an inside joke. But then when I started playing, see, what I was really good at when I was playing rugby was I'd get the ball, and obviously being quite big and powerful and strong, I would just run through people. That was my thing. Just give the ball to Mo, and I would just bulldoze people. So when I was doing that, everyone would go, boo, boo. So that's and it just stuck from there. And then I just became the beast from the Middle East, and then yeah, and then it went viral, and then I can't change it anymore. So yeah.
Well, it's an honor
Thank
to spend time with you, Dr. Mustafa, or the
Thank you.
beast from the Middle East.
Thank
It's
you.
really an honor. Thank you so much for all that
Thank
you
you for
do,
having me.
and we will, obviously support you in every way possible.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and please thanks Dr. Mustafa. Thank you.